Yo, see Google Me is in the building already. What's good with you? I don't know if that noise in the background is real faint. Let me know the volume is good. Um, since you're in the building, let me know the volume's good. I'm at a school right now doing a football game. So I did have my usual, right? The usual water, as usual, with the minerals on the back. Was my favorite, most trusted water. Since that one's gone while I'm up here at the event, they usually sell this one as like their normal spring water at Whole Foods, but this is my backup that I grabbed. So it's what I got now for the next couple of hours, unless I take a trip to get another one. So how's everybody doing out there? What's going on? Let me know what's up with you. See where y'all at with it. It's been almost, you might as well say it's been yeah, I'd say almost a week since Dr. Inky did it was supposed to be the 24-hour lecture, but wound up being a 48-hour lecture. So I don't know if y'all caught all of that. Most people didn't catch all of it. Oh, that's funny. Smagnificent Beats, I like the name. What's going on with your Mike Carter's in the building? RTP, would it be like? Thanks for coming through. Those who are in there, make sure y'all say what's up, whether y'all can stay or not. Thanks for popping through, saying what's up. I know it's been a little bit since I went live, but obviously life-wise, there's been quite a bit of updates. So I'm pretty sure any of you who follow me knows that I actually have new work that I'm doing. I still do my photography and video thing. That's never going to stop. I'm in talks with somebody who wants me to do comic book art for them. And some of you know I was in ATL a couple of weeks ago for training. I started working for HP Printing. The real large industrial ones, though, it's called Indigo. If y'all look it up, Indigo printers. These ain't joints that you'll see in a normal household. These are ones that print like textbooks and stuff like that. I'm an engineer for that. Y'all know my capacity to learn new things. I have a natural interest in STEM, but art is my lane. I just happen to like soaking up information about things STEM related because those are the things that kind of run the world. So that's where my interest lies. So that's where that comes from. So with that being said, for those of you who have not, or maybe have gotten partially through, or those of you who have watched the whole thing, you should know that being able to understand light, electricity, and magnetism is a really big deal. When you're looking at the 48-hour videos that the collection of 48 hours worth of lecture and video that Dr. Iki has put up. So you should know that in advance. You don't have to know electricity because I think if you're just naturally curious about the information that's being given out as far as diabetes, you'll be all right because it's so, it's pretty well explained. There are concepts, as always, you'll have to do some natural study for. Especially now, here's what's funny. Now, I told you I'm working on HP printers. There's a part in Inky's lectures where it talks about what is it? The third harmonic. Now, mind you, I'm not fully understanding of it yet, so I don't have a full way of understanding the issue with third harmonic. I know the issue as they say it, but not 100% understanding. But this I can tell you. The printers that I'm doing engineering on, they work on that principle. So when that was mentioned, it was pretty interesting when they started talking about third harmonic. And in the printers we have, they're what they call it's a three-phase system. And three phases, when we talk about phase, we're kind of talking about time. A lot of stuff in electricity is related to time. So what happens is if you take a circle, the hertz or the current flow, its timing, each phase, 1, 2, and 3, first harmonic, second, third harmonic, right? Each one cycles through at 120 degrees. So if you guys know, you add up 120 degrees 3 times, you get 360. So that's why. So as you spin around the hand of the clock, each phase is going to fire off or wave at a particular time. And what they were talking about is the phases that they come in, and how the third harmonic has an issue because I believe part of the waveform in the first and second phase line up. They're supposed to add up to zero, but in the third harmonic they actually don't, and that poses a problem. That's the issue. I don't have much of an understanding on why, but that's like a tiny part about the video. There's another part talking about crystal oscillators being used in electric circuitry in the past, and you see some videos and stuff based on that. So that's pretty cool. Hold up, guys. Gotta roll the window down before it sweated up in here, right? You said, what channel are his videos on? So if you want a bit of an aftermath video that's available, American, there you go. Google me, just put it down. He has a channel now called American Healer. You're not going to see the bulk of the videos on American Healer, but you'll get a nice recap video on American Healer. All right. And guys, the football game is going to be ending soon here, or it just ended. So if it's loud and you can't hear me, let me know. If the volume remains good, then just say the volume is still good, because I just rolled the window down, so there might be some background interference sound. So let me know. But other than that, when we talk about electricity, right? I'm gonna roll down the other windows so it's not right next to the phone. When we're talking about electricity, a few basic things you guys have to understand is you have to understand voltage, current. Of course, there's the electrons in the word electricity, and amps or amplification. So you have electrons, as we say, which you could call these, they like to explain things in terms of particles, but you got particles of electrons. When they're moving, we call it electricity. When you are killed by it, it's called the electrocution. Electrocution is only a term when someone is killed by electricity. You have voltage, or the pushing force. Voltage is what pushes the electrons. The movement of the electrons is the current flow. You can speed the current flow up by pushing it harder, which is by raising voltage. Then you can amplify the signal, which comes from well, I'll just tell you what I know amplification from: coiling. When you coil, you compound the magnetic field, which hence helps push the voltage up higher. So when you amp it up, so to speak, for those in the photography, that's almost like using your ISO to boost the light that comes into your camera. Okay. So that's what the deal is about that. So again, you have electrons, which are attached to atoms. Atoms, neutrons, protons, and then you have electrons. When we talk about eating alkaline food, that's where the electron part comes in at. How alkaline is your food, right? If it's more on the acid side, that's kind of like how protonated is your food. You could kind of say that. All right. So when you have what they call free radicals moving around in your body, protons and electrons have to pair up to stabilize them. So if the electron is taken and the proton flows free, you have a free radical. You eat alkaline foods to neutralize the free radical and stabilize it. Hence the term antioxidant. Okay. So that's how these things kind of connect. So you got the electrons in the atoms, the electricity, which is the movement of them, which is why our body requires movement, right? And then you have the current, which moves like water. You have like the current of water, and you have voltage that pushes that current to make it flow faster. Okay. So then you have amps, which is the coiling to raise the magnetic field so you can push the current even further. So you apply voltage to help push the electrons in a certain direction, right? Because if they're going both in the same direction, they're going to clash and produce heat, and that can make it blow. Inflammation, anyone, right? Also, if you're trying to push electricity through a channel that could not hold the amount of electricity push you're forcing through it. So I want you to imagine, if you have a pipe, water's flowing through it. Certain amount of water going through over time, depending on the size of the pipe, the water will flow through clean. It's just going through smooth, not a lot of disruptions in the flow or anything like that. But if you raise the pressure of the water and the pipe's not that big, and you try and force it through too much, it's going to put pressure against the walls of the pipe. If the pressure gets too high and the pipe can't hold it, it will burst. But the restriction you're getting of trying to push a higher flow through, in our bodies, we would call that animation. Amber Glow in the building, what it do? So you need to understand that. This is why electricity, how electricity works and the way the body works, kind of go hand in hand. The body creates what we like to call homeostasis, or you could just say a stable point of the body, right? Depending on how much work you do per day, your body creates a memory for it. And when you go to sleep, it builds your body up to produce the energy for that work that you do on a regular basis. So if one day you come along and you make your body work harder than it normally does, that's going to cause some, what we like to call, you could say inflammation. You can use that as a word, but it's like exercise, right? You work your muscles out, you build up heat in the muscles. That starts to tear up the little muscle fibers from the friction that you're creating because you're raising pressure on the body, right? Are y'all catching what I said earlier about current and voltage? Voltage applies pressure to push the current faster. When you exercise, your body has to raise the pressure of blood going through. Why? Because blood carries oxygen. So if you push it faster, more oxygen comes in. If more oxygen is going to come in, you have to push harder, which means you have to breathe faster, right? Because when we breathe, we pull in oxygen. Oxygen has electrons in it. So when we breathe in, the electrons help our body work. We do more work, it requires more electricity. What is electricity? The movement of electrons, right? So if we push our body harder, we need more electricity. Where's the electrons to create electricity? In the oxygen. So if we need more electricity, we breathe deeper, we breathe faster to pull in enough electricity to keep the body going at the amount of workload we're putting out. Okay, so this is important. So if we can't breathe deep enough and our body requires a certain amount of electricity, if the electricity is not there to power the body, then you pass out. Okay, energy exchange. This is what's going on. When I'm training people and when I'm around people, I always tell people about the effects of not getting the matter of fact, the effects, like the cascade of what happens to you when you start exercising too hard and your body doesn't have enough energy. So in the beginning, obviously, you start doing work, you start to heat up. Blood starts to flow faster because remember, you're moving your body more than normal. So the blood starts to flow faster. This is creating pressure in your system to get the blood to flow faster, which means it's going to generate heat. Okay? You start generating heat, inflammation, you start getting signs of inflammation, right? If your body is using more energy than it would standard, like to, then you're going to start breathing deeper. You're going to start sweating, right? To cool yourself down. Then the next step from there is you're going to have to go to the bathroom, because going to the bathroom helps remove certain toxins from your body. And by having those toxins out, you have room for your body to utilize a certain area of your body for more energy. Okay. Eliminating toxins, because when you heat up, the toxins in your system can become a problem. So your body will eliminate some of the toxins by making you go to the bathroom. Hence, less poisons in your body to do damage. And now your body has channels to produce more energy to help you out. So you'll do a number one in the bathroom or number two. If it still doesn't have enough energy to do it, you're going to start to see blue spots and you're going to start to get woozy, because now your body's looking to generate more energy by probably throwing up. So for those of you who get that sick feeling working out, your body's trying to eliminate a toxic load so it has more room to utilize your body's energy systems. Instead of using it to digest food, it'll just throw the food back out. And now you can produce more energy that way. If that's not enough, shut it down. Your body will put you into a low power state, which is why you pass out. So you pass out, it's like going to sleep. You're in a low power state, and now more energy, instead of using it to keep you upright and moving, your body can divert that energy to repairing and keeping you alive. Anything beyond that, if it's not enough current to still keep your body from getting hit with the maximum amount of shock, you'll die. Okay, so there's stages to all of these things, okay, even in workout. So you put more demand on your body, more of a pushing force on your body, more electric current has to be generated to keep your body going. Now, your body has feedback mechanisms. They call it a negative feedback loop. In some cases, by you moving, it naturally forces things in your body to move by mechanical force, meaning your body doesn't have some worker inside of it saying, make it move. And then your body, which means your body has to supply that thing with food and energy to make things happen. That's kind of like the mitochondria in your body, right? That's a separate entity. You bring things into your body, the mitochondria want the electrons from it so it can produce, so it can fixate phosphorus so that you have light information in your body producing and generating that work. Okay, so that would be like an outside worker. That's who you're supplying, the mitochondria. However, your lymph system, which is when you guys get mucus in your nose and in your mouth and you're spitting and all that stuff, your lymph system, some of it's natural and some of it's mechanical. That lymph system is only at maximum capacity when you move your body. When I'm pumping my arms or I'm pumping my legs, I'm creating a pumping force that moves lymph in my body to collect toxins and help get it out. So you can imagine right there, if the body is electric, movement generates a force to make things move, mechanical energy. You can imagine those who sit still all the time are obviously killing themselves because the body's not pumping to make things move. So when you go to sleep, your body's generating a set amount of energy based on what you do on a regular basis. We call that circadian rhythm, circulational rhythm, right? You do these things throughout the day, your body memorizes it. And when you go to sleep, it says, do I have the nutrients, nutrition, everything I need to put back in this person's body to generate the energy they need for the next day to do the same work they've been doing on average for the past couple of weeks. So you want to start bodybuilding, you want to start working out, you're putting more pressure on your body. Your body is going to automatically know because of the areas you put pressure on, creating inflammation and the soreness. That's the signal to your body that something could break if it does not deal with it. That's why your body has pressures where if you work out too much, eventually the muscle becomes so stiff it can't move. That's the same thing that happens in inflammation. You get the redness, the bleeding, and all that stuff like that, except in this case, it's a bunch of internal friction creating heat, which forces blood into the area, and the area expands, and when it can't expand anymore, it tightens and stiffens so that it can't move, and that's the way the body deters you from keeping going. Now, if you try and push beyond that, it's like you're trying to kill yourself, okay? So understand that. Guys, let me know in the chat if this all makes sense, if it's working, I keep going. If you need something explained, stop me because you guys know I'll get the going, right? So you move your body, electric flow happens. You're breathing in oxygen, which has what? Electrons. The electrons come in. The iron in your blood pulls the electrons from the oxygen. Now you have deoxygenated, what they call deoxygenated blood moving back through the veins so you can breathe it out. Okay, circular system. Everything works in a circle. And it's energy. That's what you're working. You're working energy in and out of your body. Your body's just creating averages. How much do I need for a given day? How much will I store for an emergency? And what are you going to put back in me to help restore what it is that I have? Okay. So if you guys were watching Dr. Inky's 48 hours, he was stressing to you the importance of what they call, people pronounce it differently, but you got autophagy or you'll hear autophagy. Now remember, phage is a word for eat, which is interesting because when we say autophagy, it's almost like saying automatically eat. But what's happening in autophagy is your body is going into a repair and build process. It's called rest and digest. So when you get rest, your body's in a low power state. And if it doesn't have inflammation and toxins to deal with, it can start repairing you. Okay. So that is very important to know. So when we're talking about let's beef up that electricity versus the body kind of conversation, right? Let's beef that up a little bit. So in the world of electricity, you also have capacitance. Now, hopefully you guys know what capacitance is. It's the ability for something to store a thing. You can have capacitors in electrical items. Capacitors have a general usage because there are some systems where the moment you flip the switch, it's mechanical. Something has to get it moving. When you add a capacitor, you can pre-store some energy and push all that energy out in a certain chunk to make the system move fast enough to react in a split second, right? So I want you to think about like a wheel that runs off of a pushing force by you, or even water, right? You got those wheels, it has buckets on it, and as water hits it from the top, it pushes the bucket, making it heavier, pushing the wheel down and making it spin. But the moment you get the water getting in there fast enough, the wheel kind of starts to take on a general spinning speed, right? It's the same thing with you running. It takes some force to get your body up and accelerating to its maximum speed. But once you hit a certain speed, you could kind of coast and cruise. You don't have to push on the ground so hard. By having a capacitor in your body or an electrical circuit, it gives it like a boost to start to get it up to speed where you can see the reaction of it. Okay. This happens when you go to sleep at night. Your body builds up reserve glucose reserves inside of your liver. So it's like a predetermined energy that you get. So when you jump up in the morning, it's kind of like getting hit with a burst of energy that your body had stored just for the sake of getting you up and getting you going. And then after that, it can kind of slow churn and let the mechanisms, the feedback loop kind of work itself out from there. Okay. So this is very important. So if you go to sleep inflamed with a bunch of stress on yourself, your body can't really perform autophagy because it has to deal with the stressors, meaning certain things have to not be going on for your body to focus on repair, right? You want to, let's say you want to paint, you want to decorate your house. Well, if the house is on fire, you got to deal with the fire first. Otherwise, everything you're trying to paint and put together is being burned up faster than you can do it. This is the principle when it comes to your body and when it comes to inflammation. So if you're now, we're like I said, this stuff is digging into the lecture that Inky gave. If you find yourself eating every 2 hours or consistently back to back, you know, you're on that so-called workout thing where it's like, oh, I eat 6 times a day, every couple of hours, small meals. If you're not eating and going to the bathroom, meaning your body's processing that stuff and getting it out, it starts to build and stack up over time. And your body's one hell of a machine. It can handle that for a long period of time. That's why some people get these diseases that they say, oh, I didn't have this problem when I was younger. You know, I'm just getting it now. It must be the age. And it's not the age. The age is nothing but how long you've been alive. The disease is how long during your living have you been doing something wrong. Because remember, trash doesn't pile up in a house instantly unless somebody like dumps a bunch of trash on it at once. But if you live in that house and you keep eating and putting stuff in the trash and never taking the trash out, over time, it's going to cause damage to the house. It'll start smelling bad. The smells and the chemicals will seep into the walls, start tearing apart tearing the place apart, right? You're going to have less movement to move, so you're going to start tearing and hitting other things. It creates this cascade effect of damage. Oh, this happens in the body too, right? Student master is in the building. Would it be like? So you have to understand the connections between electricity, between things that happen naturally and what your body actually does. And by understanding these things, it puts more of an importance on what we eat and what we do throughout our day and the decisions we make and the risks we take to get ourselves out of bad situations. Like if you live in a negative environment, right? Maybe you live in these environments where there's a lot of killing, or you're near a nuclear plant, or you're near a trash facility or a chemical dump. You're near all these things. And when you're near all these things, you know, that potential hazard on your body. So you might have to make some strong decisions psychologically or in your life to get yourself out of those positions, right? So keep that in mind. We want to do the same thing with food and with our exercise and with our life. When you eat inflammatory foods, a bunch of meat, a bunch of sugar, definitely when you're not chasing it with plenty of fiber, what's going to push these negative things out of your system unless it comes from you? And where does it come from? Your bones. Remember, your body takes mineral content, produces proteins, takes fiber, produces a gel-like liquid out of the waters in your body and out of the minerals and stuff in your body, helps package the fecal matter so that you can smoothly get it out the body. When those things don't exist, your body has to take it from your bone. Bone's only going to last for so long. Your bone is what they call a crystal lattice structure. I want you to think of like a fishnet. That's a lattice-like structure. Except in bone, it's very tiny and it's cross-hatching and it's made up of calcium, strontium, phosphorus, and all these different crystallized making chemicals. And by having your bone made up of those things, your body can pull from those things to neutralize acid things that may be burning your body up and creating inflammation. But that can only go on for so long before you run out or before the bones get really hollow. Imagine taking a tree, right? You got a tree standing there. And let's say you open up a hole in that tree and you start digging out the insides of that tree, but you leave the outer shell alone. Eventually, you'll dig out so much of the inside of that tree, it can't stand up under its own weight. You'll even be able to punch it and it probably will bend like paper. that's what you kind of do to your bones, except in this case, you want to think of it more like a thick cracker, so to speak, right? You chisel out the inside of a thick cracker, and then that outer shell, you see how a cracker breaks? So it shows that your bones are capable of holding a structure, but if you pull too much of the mineral out of it, it becomes cheap and brittle like a cracker, which means it's easy to break, and the doctor calls that osteoporosis. Okay, and that osteoporosis and that inability to get extra mineral out of your body, your own bones, to help you out, obviously becomes aging, because in order for your body to remain young looking and maintain young activity, well, it has to be the way it was when it first started. It has to have all the mechanisms with all the parts needed and all the pieces to operate. So you start losing the pieces to operate, some of the machinery doesn't go online, which means certain things don't get rebuilt and fixed, which obviously over time, because it takes time for that to happen, that's going to be what you call age. And they're going to say, oh, it's my age, I'm getting older, and things start breaking down. No, you've been spending a lot of your life eating things that have been tearing away at your structure. And now you're seeing the result years later, and you call that age. But the people who have been eating the proper nutrition and doing the right thing, not tearing their structure down, meaning instead of their body pulling from bone, it's pulling from the bank of minerals that you put into it in a healthy form throughout the day. So the body pulls from that instead of the bone. And if it gets an excess amount, it'll start to make your body denser and it'll store more. Now, there's a limit to that. Your body doesn't take all extra mineral and just store it. If you're a 200-pound person, is going to need more mineral than a 125-pound person. So keep that part in mind, right? So if you require that much mineral to be a 200-pound person, a 125-pound person eating the same amount of mineral, it's just expensive minerals they're eating. It's going to wind up dumping it back out. You're going to pee it, poop it, whatever out, because your body doesn't require it for that size, even if you're healthy. That's not a bad thing. If you're 125, your nutrition's high. It just means that your body's maintaining minerals to repair that size of body and use the materials from the healthy food you ate. Where the heavier person has to eat more, hopefully is healthy, and it will pull a bigger helping, so to speak, of minerals to maintain that size of a body. And hopefully it's healthy. If it's unhealthy, the 200-pound guy, his bones are going to get chewed away at trying to keep that body up, and it's going to pull more mineral out of his bone. You see what I mean? So hopefully he built that body up and stacked the minerals on top. Then the way his body chews away at bone will kind of be at the same rate the lighter person will. Why? Because when you build up muscle and you're eating the right nutrition, your body is like, okay, they want to be stronger, they want to lift more, pack on more muscle, pack on more mineral into their bone. Then you get denser and you get heavier, which means the heavier weight won't break your structure. Important point, and I explain this a lot when I do my live streams. Guys who are shorter and thicker, they are not what we would call stronger, so to speak, than you are. The mass of their body is more dense, which means when you put heavy weight on it, the body won't break under the pressure, because instead of the bone being thinner and taller, meaning there's a stronger point where the bone will bow out and snap, it's actually thicker and shorter. So the chances of it bowing and snapping aren't going to happen, which makes for a stronger, thicker structure when weight stands on top of the structure. You're closer to the ground and you're thicker. So therefore, your starting weight when it comes to lifting weight, especially overhead, bench pressing, squatting, deadlifting, your body has a greater chance of withstanding holding the weight and not feeling pressure, because you're denser and thicker, not necessarily because you're stronger. Okay? Because you could take a thinner, taller person, let's say 215 pounds, 6'7". They can bench 405. But then at the same time, you could be 5'7", 185, but thicker, and bench that same 405. And your starting weight, because you're shorter and thicker, can be higher than the taller, thinner person. But you can both make it to that amount of weight, right? It's just that the shorter, thicker person, their body structure allows them to hold it up. You see what I mean? So don't feed too much into the stronger thing unless you're measuring how you built your strength. Sometimes it's just body shape. I mean, if I tell a tall guy touch the ground and a short guy touch the ground, the short guy is closer to the ground. Naturally, they touch the ground faster. That's just how that works. Some things are coincidental to size or coincidental to environment, right? misunderstood. 2020, 22 was going on. Jamar Allen in the building. Would it be like? So hopefully these basics are making connections for you guys because this stuff is very important. Now, earlier I was talking about capacitance. Think liver, think blood, brain. But in general, I want you to think about pigment that Doc was talking about. Imagine having capacitors. Remember I told you earlier, capacitance is the ability for something to hold a charge. Now, the speed at which that charge dissipates, meaning comes out, kind of like a battery, you can have items where if you plug a battery into it, it could probably sap the power or the voltage out of that battery pretty fast. Whereas there are some items where it's a certain amount of voltage and it'll come out of it, trickle it out slow, like a cell phone battery, right? With pigment, I want you to take that concept of stored capacitance and now link it in a nanometer range. Now, what do we mean nanometers? All right, we got inches, we got meters, we got nanometers, we got picoliters. We're just talking about the distance of a thing apart. Higher frequencies, the meters apart tend to be closer together. So higher frequency, right? It's kind of like clapping and then clapping faster, right? Frequency. Faster clap, faster frequency. Slower clap, slower frequency, right? The mountain peaks, if you look at a chart of frequency, the mountain peaks are further away when there's a lower frequency. The mountain peaks are closer together when there's a higher frequency. That's it. So this is why I sidebar, I tend to have an issue when people say I vibrate on a higher level. You've got to be specific to what that means, because you can have a well amplified low frequency we call bass, or you can have a well amplified high frequency like a flute, right? But a bass can, notice it got that low tone, but you can bang a bass fast but still have that low, thumping tone, but you can play a flute fast and have a high pitch, right? You see what I mean? So we got to understand the differences when we say high versus low. Sometimes it's more broad instead of high and low. Let's say more, I always like to say, under how many frequencies can you connect to, relate to, get along with, whatever term you want to use, versus how high and how low. It's not really how high and how low. I get it when you say how high and how low, but that's not my preferred method of explaining frequencies when you're talking about, type of person you are and your level of consciousness, right? So that's what I mean when I'm talking about that. But when we're talking about pigments, I want you to imagine capacitance, meaning in this case with pigments, the ability to withstand because of the saturation of a thing, right? Retinols, zeaxanthin, lycopene, flavonoids, which tends to be in the yellow range, right? These pigments have a capacitance. You eat pigments, you store pigments in a certain part of the body. If you get a lot of retinols, right? Let's say retinols in the eye. You build up your retinols. You eat a lot of orange, things in the orange range of food. You're building it up. But as that blue light and those frequencies, those high, let's just use ultraviolet, like from the sun, when those frequencies hit your eyes, it's causing that pigment to be used. It's like draining a battery. This is why you want to continuously get pigments in on a regular basis, to keep that built up so that you can fight another day, so to speak. And this is what the doc is talking about when he says you want to get your pigments and your fiber in. Your fiber allows you to pass things out of your system smoothly without your body creating inflammation and friction and having to pull minerals and things from your bone. So that's for proper elimination and proper hydration, because fiber is used to gel your water. Yes, we should drink water, right? Yes, we should drink water. But for those of you who understand electrical theory, since we're talking about it, is water a conductor? Right? Is water a conductor? Some will say yes, some will say no. I've been in quite a few classes where people don't know. They go back and forth. Water is a conductor, but it's in relation to the current flowing through it, whether it can be used or not. So when you want to get a strong current through water, guess what you have to put in it? Mineral. And one of the prime minerals people use is they may use a sodium or salt solution, sodium chloride. You put more salt in the water, and the water becomes more conductive. Same with the body. The seawater that you taste in the sea is real salty, mineral salts. In your body, when you sweat, when you cry, you taste it, salty. There are minerals in your body that makes the water more jealous in nature. Plasmic, we call it plasma, right? Because it's a smart water. It kind of allows electricity and things to move throughout the body. So when you have that smart water moving throughout your body, that mineralized water, that's what we call plasmic state water. And that's the way your body prefers it internally. Whether you're talking about interstitium, whether you're talking about mucus, whether you're talking about blood, whether you're talking about the lymph system, like I was talking about before, those things are going to be plasmic or gelish state water, which is how your body is able to conduct and move current through things to keep the systems moving. Okay, so that's very important. Obviously, blood gets it from the oxygen. You breathe in the oxygen. Electrons pulled by the iron. Iron is in the hemoglobin molecule. Heme is the pigment. The capacitor. Globin is the protein, right? And you can use the iron in the middle of that to hold the electrical capacity of it, right? And as it passes through your body, the electrons get dumped to make systems move. But it's not moved in one thing. It's moved different ways through different minerals in your body. What's the big, what I call it, the big six, right? The big minerals. Doesn't mean you don't need others, but what's the big boys? The ones that connect real easily, right? Talk about them all the time. Magnesium and calcium. Magnesium makes things relax. Calcium makes things rigid. You ever hear the term calcified? Calcium makes it rigid. Magnesium makes it relax. So what do we take when we want to be able to go to the bathroom? They give you magnesium supplements. Relaxes. Muscles. Contract, calcium. Relax, magnesium. And then you got other things, which I'll explain in a minute, that go along with that. What is the other two? We were talking about electrons, voltage within the body. Potassium, sodium. Sodium gives the capacity for your body to hold on to water. When you have large amounts of sodium in your body tends to hold water. To an extent, you need that. You need your body to maintain its hydration. So a certain amount of sodium is needed. That's expected. Then you have potassium. Potassium sets the charge, like the current that will go through. It's almost like setting the voltage amount. So potassium is important to the heart rhythm. Too little, too much. Heart arrhythmia. Arrhythmia. Rhythm has a problem with the rhythm. They got other names for it. Tachycardia, rapid, bradycardia, too low. These are medical terms that are used. Tachycardia is too high, bradycardia is too low. Your heartbeat's too low. Arrhythmias, issues, right? How are these things regulated to the water? You got the water, you got the mineral. What regulates them? Liver and kidneys. Kidneys, the filter. Something supplies your body with the information that says how much mineral to hold on for the amount of water in this person's body. The kidneys will get the information, dump the excess water, keep the water necessary for your body to maintain its hydration. Remember, ebbs and flows. Your body has to remain in a stable state based on how well you've built your body or what's necessary for your body at any given time, okay? Let me see, would you say RTP? You're just listening to a vid on electrolytes before you went live. And what do they always talk about with electrolytes? Why do they give football players, right? I'm just got finished photographing a football game. What do they give them? They be like, oh, I got to replenish my electrolytes, which is basically, remember, every time I show you guys a bottle of water, I try and show you the part on the bottle, the mineral content, the dissolved minerals in the water, in your body, right? The dissolved minerals in the body. So the pigments allow us to balance our interactions with the radiation that comes from the environment. How do we define radiation? We define radiation as the frequency, the rate of frequency. When something has a high frequency, it can produce a lot of friction, which will produce a lot of heat. Higher levels produce heat faster, which have a potential to cause damage. Now we're working our way into the melanin conversation. We go like this with our hands slow, might be a little warm, might be a little cool if you're standing outside, but you start to do it faster, you start to generate heat. Why? Because the more pressure, either through speed, you're generating more friction, or through more pressure. See, I can amplify the frequency by speeding up, but not pressing very hard. Or I can stay slow, but press harder and create more friction and more heat. You see what I mean? If I press harder and move fast at the same time, I'm increasing the amplitude, frequency at the same time. That's like moving from infrared up to UV and into gamma. That's why UV radiation of the sun without melanin don't stand out there too long, because it starts beating down on the skin, creating the friction. Because remember, it's a thing tapping on the skin. It's via waves coming in, ultraviolet electromagnetic radiation coming in, striking the skin. It's coming in too fast and your body can't handle it, just like electric current flow I talked about earlier. You try and push too much water through a pipe and the size of the pipe won't let it through smoothly. It creates pressure against the walls. If the pressure's too great, it will burst. In the body, if the electromagnetic radiation hitting is too strong, too fast, your body can't handle it. Eventually, it's going to start to burn up. If it's like nuclear radiation, gamma radiation, burn up like that. You don't have the capacity, capacity, right, to withstand that. You figure you build up enough pigment, melanin, build up enough pigment, you have the capacity to maintain your bodily structure with more radiation striking it. See how that works? See the connection? Sun beats down on lighter skin. See the difference in the size of the hand? Sides, right? Lighter side of the hand, I put it in the sun, starts beating down on it. There is no melanin, just like it is on the backside, to capture that as fast. So the radiation is pushing through real fast. These vibes is coming in, and your body's trying to dissipate that heat and use what it can grab as energy. But if it comes in too fast, it's going to start heating up real fast. Heats up too much, starts to burn. Starts to burn too long, cancer. Turn it around, I got melanin there. That radiation is coming in, but it's not breaking the barrier as easily because the melanocytes is grabbing that radiation and transducing it down and moving it through the body. So the pipeline can do the work to grab it as fast as it's coming in and move it around so you can radiate it back out as energy. So the more you got, the greater capacity it can accept to turn it into usable energy and radiate it back out. See how it works? This is the connection between electricity, body, homeostasis, pigment, like melanin, and the ability to withstand pressures of the environment. Pigment does that. It's a capacitor. It's a type of capacitor. And it comes in different colors because it has to hold the capacitance of certain wavelengths of electromagnetism. Because when the electromagnetism builds up and it hits a certain wavelength, it produces a certain color. If you have that color or that pigment in your body, that part of your body has the ability to pull it in and utilize it. But there's a limit to that. The more work it does, it starts to weaken and degrade. So you have to eat more pigment, nutrition, to put more pigment into your body so that the ones that become weak can be hammered and chiseled while you're asleep and put back together so it can withstand another round. Now, if I train my body to receive more pigment, accept more radiation, I can withstand it for longer periods of time. That's why if you have, whether you have a little melanin or a lot, if you come out and get a certain amount of sun that you require for your body type throughout the day, over time, up to a certain capacitance, you can build up the amount your body can withstand. So maybe someone who's Caucasian with a tan, when they first started, maybe they can only be in the sun, let's say high humidity, 88-degree weather. Maybe they can only withstand about 20 minutes before things start stinging and burning. And then they got to go and get them some sunscreen lotion, or they just throw it on before they go out. Deep, dark woman who does it for a long time, she might start off being able to withstand 45 minutes, but could make her way up to 6 hours. Why? Because she's awakening the melanocytes, the melanocytes, site being cell, is how many you got. The more of them you got, the denser it's going to be. And denser means concentrated. So you're going to look darker, right? But that doesn't mean they're all awake. They wake up by being exposed. They get exercised. When they get exposed to UV wavelengths, that UVB light, then they start to get exercised. And over time, when you go to sleep, your body starts to wake more of them up because it says, yo, yesterday they stood in the sun for this amount of time and created a little inflammation by going a little overboard. So when we repair, we need to be prepared for that extra time they spent out there. And when your body hammers and chisels and wakes up those melanocytes, adds more melanin pigment using melanosomes and all that, now you wake up with more active melanocytes. So when that UV come rushing in, it's like having more workers grabbing it and converting it to energy. You see what I mean? That's what the melanin is doing when you wake up more sites. Now, because some people are not as dark as others, once you wake up all the ones you have, that's the maximum load of sun you can receive, or maximum load of UVB radiation you can withstand. We're talking skin here. Because if we start talking about the other ones, how much can you withstand in your eye? Well, there's melanin pigments in the eye too, but there's also those retinols and other color pigments in the eye too. Why? So we can accept certain wavelengths easier. So blue light will destroy retinol. So you got to get them orange pigments in. You know, I know carrots is one of them. Go ahead, use what you can, right? Carrots, orange bell peppers, pumpkin, things that have orange in them, things that have yellow in them. So you might want to get no, not bananas. You want to get something like squash, corn, hopefully teosinte. For your eyes, you want that purplish pigment. You might want to get in blueberries. You might want to get in purple grapes. You might want to get in purple cabbage. So you start pulling these pigments into your body so that when the pigments you have get overworked and they start to lose their quality, so to speak, you have the proper nutrition to build it back up so you could withstand another day of sitting in front of a computer, standing out in the sun, what else? Being on your cell phone all day. You know, you got to work, right? So you got to replenish these things. And, you know, you may not have the money, but that's when the decisions in life, connecting with one another, showing love, meeting up with more people. When you're connected with more people, you gain more opportunities. And sometimes the opportunity is the one you needed to put you in a position to get out of the bad situation. So let your neighbors and the people you make friends with and the people you network with, let that be a part of your network, because at any moment, that's going to be the thing that gets you out. And your mind state is going to back that up, because when we have positive mind state, we start to produce positive effects. We draw the universe to us by what we send to what we call the field. So what you meditate on, what you think about, the thing that you get into your heart because you want it so bad, you're sending vibrations out into the universe, and it can't help but return back at some point. The stronger you vibrate, the faster it comes back, and you start finding things happen. You might get vibrations back where you start looking and recognizing situations you should be in that you didn't recognize before. You start recognizing connections and innovations in your mind to create things you never noticed before. And those things bring new circumstances to you, which bring you income, people, products, materials that get you out of these bad situations. So that could be the hardest thing to have sometimes, because the stress can make it very hard to have the right mindset. But just understand that's the direction you're trying to move in. Some people need actionable steps to happen. Some people need to hear certain things. Some people need to see certain things. We all got different ways of learning and recepting and receiving things. But at the end of the day, we need to focus on where our strengths are, because if we let the weaknesses hold more room in our lives, obviously we're going to be tearing down faster than we're building up, which again, we're going to try and call that age, but that's just a way to save face. We'll blame the age because we were too lazy to stop doing what we were doing, right? Yes, RTP, that's exactly what it is. Simple explanation of how the bodily structure and how the systems interact. And these things that I am telling you, if you have not gone through Inky's, what we, it's supposed to be 24-hour, lecture, but it wound up being like basically 48 hours. This will help you get through it because you have a base understanding. When the doctor talks about certain things, you don't have to spend the time stopping and going through wondering what a thing is, because the moment you get stuck on one thing, it's going to be hard to stack the information from video to video. So it's best that you get this simple explanation of the beginner stuff now. So when you get into it, it's like, oh, heard about that. I know what it is. I can keep moving forward because now you understand what's going on, instead of getting 24 to 48 hours of just a bunch of terms and don't know where to start. So usually when that happens, you'll latch on to one thing and get really good at it, but you'll be missing the side details that make it all work. Because the things I'm telling you about, especially the term balance, homeostasis, the yin yang, people have to learn to understand. You have to apply that to everything you learn. It's a feedback loop. The body has a negative feedback loop. Study electron transport chain and the enzymes that make it work. You'll run into that real fast. You put carbs in your body. When your body has too many carbs and it can't utilize it, that's where the pancreas knowledge comes in. Insulin, it's a lot of carbs, and signals have to be sent out telling your body burn that extra energy up, or it's going to become damaging to us. So the signal comes out to burn it up. But let's say you got too little, sugars or carbs in your body. Glucagon, it's going to secrete glucagon as a message that says, yo, break down the glucose in the system to create electrons to power the body, right? Because that's what it is. We're moving the food and breaking it down into its electron components to power the electron transport chain to get the ATP inside of the mitochondria. Okay, so that's what we're going through that entire process for. So you need to respect the fact that there's a balance in everything. And when I say negative feedback loop, it means that when something comes in and it starts to reach an abundance point where it can't be used anymore, something stops it and make it go the other way. So in your body, when you eat a lot of carbs or even fats and proteins, which eventually breaks down into stored glucose, which we call stored as fat, because we store the glucose molecules in fat cells. When your body, let's say you're eating glucose, it becomes pyruvate acetyl coenzyme, and it enters the electron transport chain, goes around the chain, enters the electron transport chain, plays hot potato till it gets to stage 5, where it spins the turbine, smashes the ATP together, and creates the light in the form of ATP. When too much comes in, just inside the electron transport chain, there is a enzyme called aconitase and even isocitrate. When the body realizes that it strikes and has enough of something, it will stop there and shun it backwards and move the chain back up the field, not to convert it back into food, but to convert it back into a glucose molecule and then package it inside of a bunch of carbohydrates that we call fat. And that's how you get fat. Now, there's a speed at which that can happen. Again, we're applying principle. There is a speed at which your body can digest things, process things, and store fat. When that gets exceeded, it's kind of like a line of people waiting in the welfare line, right? You waiting to go in and get your food or your check or whatever. There's a certain threshold where that line is going to back up so much because the workers aren't taking care and giving people their stuff fast enough, where now the line is so long, there will be a line left after the store or the location closes. That leftover will cause damage in your body. In the diabetes world, now we're in diabetes, it's when it jams up in the bloodstream. Because remember, sugar gets stored in the liver. So when your body needs the extra storage, it can pull it from the liver. If you're burning a lot of calories throughout the day and you're starting to run out of energy, breathing in that oxygen, sweating and all that from exercise will cause your body to say, hey, look, the automatic available sugar that was in the bloodstream, we used it up. Now we got to pull it out of storage, which is fat. So your body's going to start to use the oxygen, which is electrons, right? I said that earlier. You're pulling electrons in your body from breathing heavy from the oxygen. Your body's taking that energy and using it to break down fat molecules and even convert the lactic acid in your muscle back into glucose so that the glucose can convert to electrons to keep powering you. So some of your power will now start to come from the fat reserves, which has glucose held inside of it. So this is the system that keeps you going. Obviously, if you are exercising and you exceed the rate that can happen, meaning let's say you take off and you're breathing real heavy, but you keep pushing it, eventually your body can't breathe in deep enough to pull in enough electrons to do enough work to break down glucose to get more electrons and more ATP to keep your body functioning at that high level. So you're going to pass out. You're going to heat up so much inside, you're not going to be able to dissipate it. You're not going to be able to get enough electrons to keep you going at that rate of work that your body's going to make you pass out, put you in a low power state. So now, since your body is not conscious, using that high brain activity and utilizing those muscles, that energy it was using to keep you up, it's going to use to actually repair you. But again, if the necessary energy to keep the systems going, even when you're passed out or when you're asleep, if there's not enough energy to keep even that going, death. You'll need outside help. That's where someone is going to give you CPR, pressure to keep you breathing. They have to keep oxygen going to your brain, because if it doesn't, brain dead, you're dead. Okay, so oxygen has to keep coming in, so they give you CPR. Doctor comes in, He's not breathing. They're giving you CPR. Now they're trying to apply an electrical charge. Boom, we hit them an electrical charge while they're breathing. Remember, pressures, compressions, keep them breathing. Now as they're breathing, electricity. Boom, they're trying to give you that jump start. Remember, what are they giving you? They're giving you the paddles. That's capacitance current. Boom, we shoot it in all at once to jump start the system turning and see if the body can pick it up and keep it going. That's what I was talking about earlier with capacitance. Capacitance is stored to jumpstart a thing so it can start moving and continue to move. Pigments have a way of working the same way. So you take that same principle of capacitance and now you put it in a nanometer range to handle different frequencies. So there are pigments in the ear, eye, nose, skin, mouth, hair due to the amount of radiation coming in. Vibrations are a form of radiation no matter how low or how high they are. It's just that very high vibrations you feel as heat. The ones you can withstand, you don't feel as heat. They just pass right through. And the ones that are amplified but very low, you might feel as cold. You see what I mean? So you have to understand the forces that are touching your body and the balancing act within it. Food is a part of that. Pigments are part of that. Proteins are part of that. Blood, oxygen, electrons, water. It's all a part of it. There's a balancing point among all of it. And this is what will keep you going. Okay? That's right. Defibrillator, Google me. That's the thing. It's stored charge within those paddles. They put the liquid on it, right? Because what does liquid do? Speeds up charge. Also, remember, you have what they call hydrophilic and hydrophobic surfaces. So if you don't put the right, if you put certain things on your skin, it'll absorb into the skin faster than other things will. Your skin is kind of both. It's part hydrophilic and part hydrophobic. It's more hydrophobic. It's more partial towards fats, right? So that water can't just easily penetrate the skin because then water-based things would. Have you guys ever worked with chemicals? Some people work in chemical plants and they're working with these nasty chemicals. A lot of guys who did black rooms, dark rooms and film, they had chemicals they work with. Painters might have had it with turpentine. Some of the stuff I do with engineering, they have chemicals where if it touches your skin, you taste it in your mouth because it's absorbing through your skin and hitting your bloodstream, and the bloodstream passes through every area in your body. So if it's passing through anything with nerve receptors and picking up signals, you're going to taste it. So that's the big deal with that. So you have to understand, when they put that liquid on a defibrillator, that gel plasma is a way to speed up the connection between those things in the body without introducing too much heat through friction. Instead of putting, flat metal paddles onto skin, and when it hits, it just gets impedance through a lot of friction from the skin, you can gel it up. And when you gel it up, that gives a liquid filament to push the charge through a little bit better. So, and that's what gets the jump across. And once it gets across, is it enough to jumpstart the system? If they do it enough times and can't, you die. If they do it enough times and they catch it, and your body's like, it's like having a low battery in your car. You can't turn the key and start it, but if you get the jumper cables, hook it to someone else's car, it'll send enough power through. Now, when you crank that key, power from the other car will shoot into your battery and jumpstart it. Now, once it's started, you disconnect the cables and your car keeps running. The body does the same thing when you're saving it. Pump it, keep the oxygen flowing in by doing chest compressions. Defibrillator hits you with that jump charge. Your body catches a certain amount of electricity and it boosts the amount that's still turning. If it can't boost it, it won't jumpstart. Eventually, they're going to stop. Can't do it forever. So that's how that whole thing works. So I hope a lot of what I explained makes sense. Let me know how y'all feeling out there. Do y'all have any questions about any of that? Because again, all these things I'm talking about, the melanin, the pigment, the connection to electricity, the autophagy, the exercise and what it does, the gelling of the waters. The only thing that I have not quite mentioned yet is spiraling. Because spiraling, what happens? That happens when two forces of opposite poles meet and they bang against each other. It happens with hot and cold weather. When you get a hot front, cold front come in, you form a tornado or a hurricane, you start getting these violent storms in the world. So in your body, those things happen too. When they talk about the ventricles, inside the third ventricle is actually where cerebral spinal fluid is made. If you guys listen to Dr. Valentine in the past, Dr. Phil Valentine, he used to talk about the life blood of the human. When a man has too much sex, he's draining that life force energy that goes up the spine. And they like to use words like kundalini and chakras and all that. You know, what that channel that goes up the spine, the Jed pillar, so to speak. Remember, that's the central nerve network. Each vertebrae has nerve fibers that comes out and shoots out to different parts of the body to keep it alive. Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral. Cervical back here behind the neck area. C3, 4, 5 keeps you alive. Remember, you're counting downward. C1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there's a certain amount of thoracic, certain amount of lumbar, certain amount of sacral. If you take out certain parts of the sacral, you can't get it up in the morning. It's not just a thing about nutrition. Remember, it's holistic, right? If I move your spine out of position a certain way, you can't get it up the way you used to. I move it back in position, you can. Why? Because my nerve fibers. Chiropractors are not bone doctors, they're nerve doctors. They manipulate muscle and bone back into position so the nerves fire correctly by not being pinched, squeezed, or out of position. See, that's what chiropractors are for. Medical and chiropractor fight against each other. You'll hear stuff like people say they're scared of chiropractors because I hear they can, there could be some injuries where they ruin your spine and your body and all that stuff. That's the same thing with surgery for doctors. So remember, these are highly trained people doing these things. This is not a common occurrence that happens. It's just a possibility. People get scared by possibilities, but that's the same thing when you take meds and when you go to the doctor and get surgery. When you go to the dentist and you get teeth extractions and stuff, same thing, same risk. Question is, how much do you trust the risk, right? Stabilization or expiration. Yeah, you could definitely use that as a way to narrow it all down, right? So these things they have to be understood. So in the third ventricle, it's weird when you read up on the ventricles, it's almost like you're slowly moving your way down into a funnel system, where the fourth ventricle is actually the funnel where things go down in that have been created out of the first, second, and third. So in that third ventricle, you create cerebral spinal fluid. The cerebral spinal fluid, when that gets used, because remember, anything being liquefied in your body is using water. And when charge runs through there enough, it can eventually dry out. If you pinch off the nerves, if you put too much compression, if something breaks, you pinch off the ability for that communication to keep happening. And that's what could cause the problem. So you mess up the lumbar, you have lower region problems. You might have sciatic nerve issues. You might have issues with your legs being pain and in pain, glutes in pain, hamstrings in pain, feet in pain, stuff like that. Sacral, usually related to the colon, sexual reproductive drive. Thoracic, upper body, places like the heart and things like that. Sacral, a lot to do with the neck and brain area. C3, 4, 5 keeps you alive. You guys ever seen the movie Swordfish? There's a point in that movie where a guy gets chopped in the back of the neck. Chop him in the back of the neck, cut that communication to 3, 4, and 5, kill a person, cut off you desync the brain from the heart. I said earlier, if you move the pelvic alignment out of position in that sacral region, can't get it up in the morning. Start having issues in the thoracic, closer to the heart channels. That spine is off, heart palpitations. In certain areas, high blood pressure. Yes, spine being out of alignment, you can get the symptoms too. It's not always just, diet. That's why it's a holistic situation. Herbs' job is to help maneuver energy. That's what herbs do. Nutrition from the food provides electrons, more positive ions or negative ions, depending on the food we eat. We get more of the positive ions when we eat the acid food. We get more of the negative electrons when we eat the alkaline foods. It's kind of weird, right? We remember the term oil rig. Oxidation is loss, reduction is gain. So to reduce something, put a minus next to it, is to add electrons. Don't ask me, that's the way it's explained. And to oxidize something is to take away the electrons. So when you guys hear things like NAD or NADPH, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide hydrogenase, that's an enzyme. So when you see the H on the end, you got the hydration. Take it off, you don't have the hydration. So what you're talking, or you'll see the DH, dehydrogenase, which means it's been hydrogenated. So if you see like FAD minus, that means it's got 1 electron, because they just call it a minus. They don't say -1. If it's got 2, it'll say -2 or -3. It's in the reduced state, meaning electrons to give. In the positive state, then that means it's in the oxidation state. It needs to regain electrons so it can cycle back through again. Okay? So remember that when you see these chemistry terms or something has a minus next to it, it's got electrons attached to it, electrons that can be used. If you see the positive next to it, that's a proton. And those protons could be oxidative by themselves, free radical type stuff. Okay. So you got to remember. So when we say vortexing, we're talking about bipolar. We do have the negative and the positive. It's just that we create separation of charges. Positive charge over here, negative over here. And by having them move further apart to a certain distance, it creates a force in the middle. And the forcing in the middle trying to come back together starts to cause a spin to happen. And when you cause that spin to happen, that's when you get the mix and you get the action. So anyone who studies herbs, who knows how to get that affinity to happen, separation of charge, which creates amplification of use, starts to do some really cool things, right? So, these are just, like I said, these are beginner explanations of steps, but they're huge in terms of getting you guys in the game and actually using the information, right? Because everything I explained so far, it gives you a method of use, because now you're thinking about the balance of a thing. When you start to get into high science, you spend a lot of time where you have to think before you react, because when the charges and the chemicals get really strong, you could kill yourself. So this, like the fact I'm doing engineering work now, I'm dealing anywhere from 240 to 400 volts. Anything over 50 will kill you. Obviously high voltage, high current, high amplification or high amps, those things can kill you. But in general, the general rule of thumb is we see less than 50 volts, you'll get a hell of a sting, depending on how close you are to 50. Anything over that can kill. Okay, that's our standard for at least where I'm working at. Okay, so you got to start thinking, like, what are you about to do before you do it? A guy told me a story at the job the other day. He said someone he knew in the military, electrician, and he was trying to show a class and trying to prove a point, right? And he was talking about having a live wire flopping around on the ground. And if I take that wire and point it straight up in the air, such and such would happen. And then he said he decided to show people what happened if he reconnected that line, right? And the bad thing was he reconnected the line, and they heard all these people out of nowhere. They started saying, "Oh, he's hearing all these people scream on the roof," and all these people start running away. He was just showing a class something. When he reconnected that line, it was a construction worker on the roof who was working on something. And when he reconnected it, it fried him. So, of course, needless to speak, that caused a hell of an issue with the state, someone getting sued and all that good stuff. But you got to think before you move. If you're not properly grounded and you're about to touch some, a hot or neutral wire in connection cables, right? You got to have even the unit that's being energized grounded properly, because you could have like an air conditioner and the system not be properly grounded, and you could have rogue electricity flying through that thing, and you touch the air conditioner and fry yourself. Not because you touched the wires, because you touched the unit itself and you weren't properly grounded. Okay, that might be loud. Roll up. Sound like it's a little loud, but these things matter. Electric current can be pushed. You can push current through your body. Remember, your bones are piezoelectric. Piezoelectric means when you put pressure on them, they generate electric charge, which can be used. When the doc was talking about light or sound becomes light through the through the usefulness of melanin, sound and frequency go hand in hand. Remember the old saying, if a tree falls in the middle of a forest and no one's there to see it, does it make a sound? If it fell, it made a sound, whether you were there or not. When something moves, frequency has been created. There's something creating a force friction against the field of what we call the ether or the environment. The ether is a neutral field, a big blanket, so to speak, where different forces meet with each other and cause phenomena to happen. That is a definition that I would give of a field, the ether. So it's a blank check. It's a blank space. Things can be created within it depending on the disturbances or the frequencies caused. If I whisper, the frequency's very minute. If I yell, greater frequency. If I amplify it enough, it starts to create light. And then if it moves enough, electricity, right? What we call speed of light is not light traveling somewhere. It's the movement of the frequency across a field. If I take a rope and I whip it a certain way, you're going to see a loop appear and work its way down the line. When the frequency is very high, the distance that loop will make it gets greater. The reason is when you first start the frequency and start shaking something, it makes its way down the line. But it's not that something is moving per se. It's one big blanket, just like the blanket on your bed. You disturb one side, you're eventually going to affect the fibers on the other side. If you can keep that flow going, it becomes a continuous line. The faster it moves, the more solid it becomes. So you start to see it as a solid. So it's not so much that the light itself, I'm going to turn on a light and the light's going to fly its ass down there. No, the ether itself is the medium under which light is induced. If you disturb or perturb the field enough, the distance at which the disturbance can be felt is further. So if it's light, it can be seen further. That's what's meant by the speed. So you have to get that correct within your head. Okay? So understand, we're in a field, there's one big blanket we are all in. And when we disturb the field certain ways, we get different phenomena. If we have electromagnetism, the light is at a 90-degree angle to it every single time. Not all light can be seen. Not all sounds can be heard. Okay? We need to respect that. That's why there is an electromagnetic spectrum. This is why you have different senses. You can sense certain thresholds. There might be a very tiny frequency or tiny sound and a very big one. Certain ones amplified or not amplified a certain way fall outside of the spectrum in which you can sense it. You can see a certain amount of electromagnetism in the visible spectrum. You can hear a certain amount within the auditorial spectrum. You could taste a certain amount within the touch spectrum. Okay? Frequencies go all kinds of ways. Why? Because they can have shapes. And I spent a lot of my live streams talking about shapes. George Macon in the building. Yahya Abdul Kabir Bey in the building. What's going on? So you guys have to respect the forces in nature. We are in one big 3-dimension, 5-dimensional, whatever dimension you want to call it. It's one big blank canvas that's being disturbed endlessly. And that's how the universe keeps expanding. It's one big disturbance going on. And as those disturbances take on different shapes, you have people who have eyes, ears, nose, and mouth but look different. Different shades of hair, shades of color, different amounts of pigments we require, different weights, different color fingernails or whatever, right? Whatever it might be. Different surfaces, different things that move and don't move. These are all forms of disturbances that we can interact with. When we use the word in a vacuum, we're talking about passing a phenomenon through space where there's nothing to ping pong and disturb it. You take it out of the vacuum and put it in a real life situation, there's something there to disturb it. That's not in a vacuum. Meaning if the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, as they say, which again, it's not the light is running from here to there, it's one big blanket being disturbed. And if the disturbance goes far enough, the distance at which it goes where you can see it is what they call a speed. Again, if I got a blanket, the blanket is 10 feet long. If I shake it with a very low frequency, how long does it take for you to see the wave hit the other end? That's the speed of your frequency. You start shaking it faster and stronger. Stronger makes it go further. Faster just makes you see more waves in a shorter distance. Combine both, that's a lot of amplification. That means not only are you shaking fast, you're shaking fast and strong. That means it goes further and it can be seen greater. You see what I mean? That's what we mean when we say speed of light. So you can have the speed of anything. Certain lights, if there's enough, like let's say you connect a circuit. If you put enough insulative material in the wire, that's creating, you might have, remember I explained these things at the beginning of the actual live stream, but you have the voltage, which is creating the pushing force to move the electrons in a certain direction. Then you have the material or the atmosphere, which can slow down the movement. And that's what we would call some type of impedance or insulation. Insulation materials will cause a certain amount of impedance. So maybe you fire an electron out of a gun, it might have a certain speed it will go. But if you fire it out of a gun inside of water, that water creates an equal and opposite pressure, which doesn't let it move as far as fast. That's your insulative material that causes impedance. The pressure going back against it as it tries to move will generate a certain amount of heat. If the heat is not very great, it won't cause a fire. It won't cause any great disturbance. But you try and fire a bullet while pointing it directly at a metal pipe, the impedance, you're going to hear a bang, and it may not make it far. You're going to see heat at the edge of the pipe, and the bullet, it might have enough impedance to bounce the bullet back at you and hit you. Because the impedance is so strong, you get negative. You're not getting forced through. Your insulator's too great. It's actually creating the opposite effect. You're trying to put a push where something's pushing back harder. So you get an issue there. So you see what I mean? So the heat or the inflammation in the body, that's generated when the amount of electricity needed to move an object, the electricity can't get through the system fast enough to make it happen. However, enough force being put in that electricity to move, it don't matter if something is blocking it. If that thing is not strong enough to sustain it from moving, that electricity is going to find a way to escape and it's going to explode through. It happens with your body. Your body's piezoelectric. When you jump, you bench, you put pressure on yourself, you're generating a certain amount of electricity within your bones when it feels it. So what happens is you jump off a surface, you lift weight too heavy, it puts a certain amount of pressure on you. If your organic materials cannot, meaning you haven't built up the muscle, you haven't built up the crystal lattice structure in the bone to be able to withstand such a force, because you're generating electricity is being forced through a system. If the bone structure is not done well enough, it ain't big enough, the structure ain't well enough, the electricity you put on it is going to try and move through, and it's going to have restriction because the channels aren't open enough to move it. But the force got to get out. If the force is little, you'll feel it as a little bit of pain, itching, or tingling. If the force is great, you'll feel a lot of pain trying to dissipate, and over time the pain goes away like, oh man, that hurt, but it's going away now. That's the electricity dissipating. If they hit you with a strong enough force and it's moving very fast and your body can't make it get through, you will hear a pop sound, because that is the escape of the frequency, the sound, the light, the energy is escaping because it's got to move. So this is why people can lift heavier weight. They can make more connections within their head. They've done a lot of exercising and a lot of practice. They've built up enough structure to be able to withstand these things. I am 205 pounds, 5'10". My standard deadlift is 405. My standard deadlift before I lose grip is 455. If I put chalk on my hands, then I can deadlift 535. Maybe a little more, but I haven't tried to go over. The only reason I can deadlift that much is because I spent a lot of time practicing and training my core and training my legs and training my feet and training my lats, which is what you use to do pull-ups. When the supporting muscles are strong and bigger and the bone around it is denser, when I try and pick up heavier weight, it's going to pull and put stress on my bones and joints. The bones are going to generate piezoelectricity because pressure and stress is being put on them. So a certain amount of electrical force to be able to carry that weight is being generated. If my body can handle it, the weight will pick up. If my body can't handle it, I'm going to start struggling, trying to breathe deeper to get more electrons into my body, but it just won't work because the body can't hold enough electricity to pick it up. Now, if you try and force it up, the weight will be pulling harder on you than it. And if you keep holding on to that bar and pulling, it will tear your arm right out of the socket. You see what I mean? Because you don't generate enough force to pull it. You can't breathe and force enough force through it to move it. So keep these things in mind. That's all I'm saying. I'm giving you these balancing points of view and all these standards. All these years we've built up talking about health stuff, I'm putting a lot of it together now. And the only thing I probably haven't mentioned at this point, I think the last thing we mentioned was the spiraling vortex, is the basics of the food you eat. The carbohydrates is the energy food you eat. The fat is a form of insulation material you put within your body. And the proteins is structural. Meaning if there's a mechanism in your body that moves, proteins build it up. And proteins are what? Amino acids come together, and sometimes they have minerals involved to activate a certain current flow to run through them. So for instance, you got when you see the heme molecule, the hemoglobin molecule, you look at the chemistry chart, it's got iron in the middle. Same shape with magnesium in the middle is chlorophyll. Same shape with sodium in the middle is melanin. Okay, so shapes with amino acids, carbs, proteins, fats, minerals, you make up these shapes, or what we like to call these proteins, which are built off the amino acids, to form structures to make mechanisms move. Then we power them through things like calcium, magnesium, ATP, electrons. We set the condition under which they can receive the electrons and power themselves through sodium and potassium channels, and even the use of chlorides within the body. We may be able to buffer acid conditions in our body by formulating bicarbonates with sodium bicarbonate, because we get sodium in our diet. We get bicarbs that are created within our body, and they buffer acids. It's kind of like if there's an acid bubbling things up and causing inflammation in your body, if I hit it with certain forms of powder, which is like an alkaline substance, it will neutralize that and stop that bubbling action from happening, which is tearing the thing up. So when you eat all these acid foods, your body sheds minerals from the bone, creates that bicarb, hits that acid, quells the acid to keep your body from ruining its structure. And anything that got damaged, when you get to sleep, it'll take minerals and materials or more from your bone to rebuild that area. You start running out of bone, you're aging, because now certain areas of the body need to be repaired and there's no material to do it. You're not eating the material, you have no storage of material, and your bones are weak. So this is the game. This is how it all rolls. Let me know how y'all feeling out there. I think I've chimed over quite a bit of stuff. Again, if you go to Inky's lectures, which are on, you'll get a little piece on American Healer YouTube page. That's where you'll find him now. But you have to be a Patreon member, any level, the $40, $85, $200 level, any level, and you'll have all those lectures that he just did. And it's plenty of information. I actually have downloads of all of them, just so I would always have it. Because, you know, with social media and digital age, you never know how long things will stay up. So you want to make sure if you can get a copy of these things, you actually have them. So it's about, I'd say, 9 videos. It's either 9 and a 10th that's free right now on American Healer, I think. And Carly Green actually has a page too that I think one of the videos are on. So the real Carly Green, I believe her channel is. You'll find one of the videos there. But look on the American Healer page. Also go to the Patreon page, and that's how you'll be able to see all of those different videos that took place from 9/11, which trickled all the way into basically Monday and Tuesday afterwards. So a lot of info there. Some of the videos are 2.5 hours. Quite a few of them are a little over 4 hours. They kind of stack. He tried to make sure that none of the videos went over about 4.5 hours. If he did, he never touched 5. None of the videos that I have say 5 hours. So there are rehash videos if you didn't see them while they were there, like the 11-hour diabetes video plus the follow-up 5-hour video he did at one point talking about diabetes. But you should keep in mind, melanin is not just skin. Melanin is in the eyes, because the pigment inside the eyes, the melanin in the eyes, when light comes in your eyes, it actually through the retina, it gets channeled into the back, strikes the rods and cones. Cones begins with a C, which is for color. Rods is for low light. It's sensitivity. So you'll start seeing shades of blue and gray when things get dark. You don't have enough light striking the cones to energize them enough for you to see color. So then the rods become more prominent. So when the job is for the radiation to come in through the eye, for your eye to detect the radiation, channel it into the rods and cones so it can basically decode the frequencies of it. This is where the pigments come in at. You have the pigments helping to channel and draw it in as capacitors and receivers. So it'll draw in, strike the back of the eye in the ocular area, go through the nerve into the brain to be decoded. Without the melanin pigment inside the eye, the extra radiation won't be absorbed and transduced into energy. It will actually scatter and cause damage in the eye. Blue light has a greater chance of doing this. If you cause damage in the eye, I think the doc was talking about in one of the documentary pieces in the lecture, that if you cause enough damage to the eye, cataracts is actually your body forming a shield around the eye to protect it, since you didn't. So again, when you guys go through the lecture, you're going to see these things in the 48 hours and all that stuff like that. You're going to notice this information in there. So there's melanin pigment in the eye, so that light does not scatter and create damage within that organ or that system inside the eye. You got melanin in the skin because, you know, that's the biggest organ in the body. So when that radiation strikes the skin, there has to be a first line of defense. The stronger the radiation hitting the skin, the more melanin, or at least the more active melanocytes you got, the greater your body can grab hold of those frequencies, convert them into energy. We are photovoltaic. We don't do photosynthesis. Photosynthesis creates sugar crystals we call carbs that are in plants that make up the plant fibers. We are photovoltaic, meaning light becomes voltage. What did I say voltage was earlier? The pushing force that creates current, movement of electrons. It's the pushing force. So if it creates a pushing force of current, and this body is a vacuum sealed bag, a field, the moment you have something in the body just sitting and waiting and you apply a push to it, you get current flow, which means you get energy in the form of voltage. Voltage is the push. Electrons in the body, as long as there's electrons, electricity can be had, right? Electricity, the movement of electrons. How do we move them? We apply pushing force. Photovoltaism, voltage. Light creates voltage through melanin to push electrons, hence we feel energy. That doesn't mean that if you're bored and depressed and you're sitting there and, oh, I'm so tired and I'm so weak, but I'm sitting in the sun. That's not how that works. It's the type of thing where it's a movement-based thing. You're doing so much work. You're feeling so alive. You're listening to music in some cases. You're doing things where it's like, damn, 10, 12 hours passed and I ain't ate nothing. You didn't realize you didn't eat because you were hungry. You didn't eat because your energy was coming from somewhere else. You see what I mean? That's what the doc was trying to explain. Sound becomes light. Once a frequency is created, sound, electricity, magnetism, light, those things are there because frequency means disturbance of, and the ether is a field. It's a field that can be disturbed to create phenomena. You disturb it, the disturbance itself is a frequency. How that frequency looks, I don't know. Is it short and wavy? Is it slow and real strong? Or is it both? It's real fast and strong. And then you have to convert that into a three-dimensional structure. So it's for three-dimensional. Now, how many variations of that can you get? And every time you vary it, a 3D structure that can vibrate a little, slower, fast, or a lot slower, fast, and also be in a 3D shape, causing it to be within different areas of the magnetic field, creating a certain color, attracting a certain amount of magnetism, which creates a certain electrical structure, which creates a certain shell. And then those things combine and make different structures. So you can imagine you get a bunch of different stuff in the world. One big blanket of possibilities we call the ether, we call it God. And if God is that big blanket, that big ether, then that means anything created within it is connected to God. So that's how God can be omniscient, omnipotent, and everywhere. So you are a part of that expression of God. The buildings, the trees, the universe, the stars, those are all expressions. Those are all disturbances within a medium we call the ether, or we would call God. You disturb it, something is created out of it. The thing created out of it is attached to it. So hence it's still connected to God. Whether you want to call God a he, she, it, whatever, that's the master thing there. Okay? How is the cerebral spinal fluid term with the sacral ventricles spelled? Can you reword that a certain way? You said, how's it spelled? Be more specific in the wording. I'm not sure how to read that. Are you asking me to spell something or how something is expelled, or I'm trying to just be sure of how that's being how you're terming the question. With the sacral ventricle spelled, yeah. It's like I get everything word for word, but not how the question is being asked. But yeah, see if you can reword it in a way where I can kind of understand it. And at some point, Google me. I'll even create a live stream where you could just jump in. I might just throw out the link there. Y'all could just jump in and ask these questions so you can kind of explain them to me directly. My preferred way of learning is usually visual. So when things are in text, it's not a guarantee I'm gonna interpret it correctly. So but yes, yes, we need to understand these things because these are the basics of what makes things work. And melanin is in everything. Think about it. We got hair is melanated, right? The follicles where things attach. And we got that dark color here, and this thing coils. And remember, coiling creates amplitude. So if something is moving like this and I coil it, I make it move like this, not by adding more material to it, but just by coiling the one material I still have. Coiled copper is usually in the electrical world. We'll have coiled copper. So by coiling, we can strengthen the amplitude of something without adding another piece of something onto it. So instead of saying, let me amplify how strong my hair can pick up a signal, right? For those who see things like the esoteric way, it's like our hair reaches towards the sky, it's coiled, it's made of copper, and it's got carbon, so it can be electric. It can be definitely can produce static electric, but yeah, it can draw in signals from the universe and give us downloads and all that stuff like that. For those who look at things that way, you got to look at that coiling, that curling that happens to the hair, because that curling raises the amplification of a thing, right? So you said how's it spelled? But I'm wondering, are you asking about a specific word? Like how is a specific word spelled? Like did you spell sacral correctly? Did you spell ventricles correctly? Or are you saying how is something expelled from the ventricles into the cerebral spinal fluid, which obviously has a whole process within itself? In that case, the only thing I can say at this moment is I know for a fact that that cerebral spinal, because people used to talk about you use up the life force fluid that's within the spinal cord. And it's like when I started reading up on the ventricles, and it's funny because before the doc talked about the ventricles and how big of a deal it was, I ran into it before in my studies. I just kind of was like, oh, the ventricles, because for me, when I studied the ventricles, I was like, oh, so this is how we perceive all of our, our senses are really perceived. This is kind of because remember the eye of Horus, it shows that dividing line, the perception percentages, so to speak, or fractions. So that's kind of how I kind of picked it up as like a flag off, like, oh yeah, that. But when he mentioned the cerebral spinal fluid came from it, it kind of brought that back to mind. Like, damn, I did read that because that was like a game changer for me. I was like, wait a minute, everybody kept talking about you get this fluid within the spine, and that's the fluid that creates the life force. Like when men have sexual fluid comes out, people always attach it to that. Like obviously there's the testicles and stuff like that, but it's kind of explained as if the fluid that even builds up in the testicles, the thing that allows the testicles to work to store that fluid, is the cerebral spinal fluid. And that's why we know that fluid is made from a lot of minerals. And we used to make jokes in college about how when the women would they give you chew game or whatever, and they would swallow, so to speak, um it would be real nutritious. We used to make jokes about that because we heard that in health class. They would talk about how much nutrition is in seminal fluid. So I just thought that was interesting. That stuff just sounds like there's a full connection. I can't say I've read up on how does cerebral spinal fluid get into the sexual drive, but there's a clear connection there. Like, because you got to ask yourself, you don't just get semen out of nowhere. Like the testicles are not just going to suddenly have it in there. These fluids have to come from somewhere. So I guess it's incumbent upon me and whoever, even you, Google me, maybe we should even look at that. Like, is there a direct running track from the cerebral spinal fluid directly to the to the testes area? It sounds like it should be a simple answer. I should actually know. That's the funny part. But we always chalked it up to, you got the testicles. I guess all the fluids we take in go there, and then it just kind of mixes the cocktail, and we just boom from there. But who knows? Maybe I need to look into that to see if there's a connection there. But I do know for a fact, going to chiropractors enough, when I used to talk to them about the chart, they would mention in the sacral region, guys who would have issues in the bedroom, that if they corrected their gait, which had a lot to do with the lumbar and the sacral area, that all of a sudden the bedroom became good again, because they used to wonder why was their diet so good and they would exercise, but they still could had troubles in bed. And it was like, well, you're out of alignment. So the nerve is trying to fire and it's only getting a partial signal. So not as strong as you used to be because you're not getting a full push from the electrical signal. Remember, we got nerve fibers with synapses. So the currents in our bodies don't easily just flow smoothly down a channel like like blood just flowing down the channel. With electricity, the synapses are jump gaps. And that jump gap causes, it's weird because they learned this in Wi-Fi signaling. Like I can have a signal here and a signal over there and can't detect anything in the middle. It's just like they use the word scalar. So it's crazy, right? So yeah, I guess we should look into that. It's too bad I'm not home, because then you guys know I would have just ran through a chart. I would have just pulled it up and shared screen, but can't really do it from here where I'm at right now. But yeah, good question. You kind of made me think about that, Google me. But I know there's a connection there. We know that when it comes to the spinal column, you need that cerebral spinal fluid to make that channel work. It's got to be liquidated. Nothing in the body works dry. Nothing's created dry. It always starts from a liquid point, even a nail. So there has to be a liquid point being created, because that liquid is what allows charge to be able to move the way it does. So you can't have things dry, because if you have electricity moving through a dry medium, it'll burn out faster. So by keeping things wet and liquid, this allows current flow to move. And when current flow is moving, you're also creating a magnetic field. And when you have electricity, magnetic field, light is always at a right angle to it. So, or is it magnetism is at the right angle of it? We know the right-hand rule, right? Look up the right-hand rule. I'm spitting out so much information, the basics start to kind of get shaky a little bit. But yes, that's how that whole thing kind of goes, right? So we need to keep that in mind. We get our doctors, because our doctors are pretty much really good with their diagnosis, the surgery. The medication is a way to kind of hold us if we don't have an answer. That's where the medication has its point, right? You know, you got a disease, you don't know how to solve it. No one's ever solved it before. It's brand new. People have the sickness. Okay, the symptoms are this. We can give you the medication to hold off the symptoms, to keep your body from being further damaged, to hold you up as long as we can. Now, we know medications that turn systems off is going to create a long-term problem if you're on a medication too long, because remember, your body has systems that work for a reason. They're not meant to remain off for a long period of time. So when you hear things like inhibitors, it's for a time. You're not supposed to consistently inhibit something your body is naturally supposed to do. So when you guys start to look at the documentary and you get into things like harmine and what's it called? I think it's T something F beta inhibitors. Can't believe I'm forgetting it right now. A few minutes ago I just had it. But it's T something something B inhibitors that go along with harmine, because when they first discovered harmine, they said would regrow pancreatic beta cells at a very low level. It was something like 2%. It was a 2% something. I don't even know if it was a month. It was something like that. But I know when they mixed it with the inhibitors they were talking about, and this is in the documentary info that Dr. Inky has. It's the full detail is there. You can even hear the doctor talk about it. Then it boosted the beta cell production to about like 8 to 16% a day, which is huge. A day, like, yo, come on, man. Like if you having issues, like, remember, you're talking about in diabetes, it becomes a real big problem when your beta cells start to get destroyed, your islets of Langerhans cells, as they call them. So when those islets get destroyed, you have less cells to secrete insulin to help you digest your food, so to speak. So if you lose too many of those, you slow down digestion, food starts to sit in your system longer, it creates a more toxic state. And then you start getting sugar pooling inside of your blood and eventually in your tissues, which is why your feet, which is furthest from the heart where you pump, those things will start to turn colors. Fingers will get numb, toes will get numb. Eventually things will turn colors and they'll start being destroyed because there's not enough insulin being generated to dissipate the sugar from the bloodstream. So by regrowing the pancreatic beta cells, you're reversing the damage. Some people are able to reverse diabetes because they just have enough cells, beta cells, to they didn't really compromise digestion. They just had a lot of sugar causing some drying in the body. They got dry lips, go to the bathroom all the time, stuff like that. And they're at risk for heart issues and other issues. But once you start getting that tissue damage because you're losing too many cells, that's the point where this is key, because now you're regrowing the cells, which will help you reproduce insulin, which means now your body has a track to dissipate sugar out of the bloodstream and help you store more fat just to keep the sugar out of dangerous channels. That's a really big deal. So this is the reason why now you can actually make an argument about being able to heal diabetes type 1, because diabetes type 1 is you either have no activity, insulin activity coming from the pancreas, or too little. So they're on insulin for the rest of their life. If they have too little, that means they have too few cells actually being active. If you can start growing the cells, then you grow to a nominal point. The moment you hit a nominal point, the body's giving a natural reaction now, like, damn, now it's body's doing these things on its own. And doctors measure that by seeing how much insulin you need to the ratios of activity your body's doing. So once it starts measuring it and they start noticing the amount of activity, if the activity the body is doing is going up, then obviously the amount of insulin the body they need to give you versus what the body's secreting can go down. And this is how you eventually wind up off the medication and off the insulin. So this is a really big deal. So yeah, make sure you look that up. Look up those beta factors that go along with the harmine, and then also look up that DYRK1, DYRK1. Also look up that, because that was a part of it too. So you're going to want to start studying these things to be able to have some use for it. For those who are not into the study, but they just want something to give their family, this is why the doc has the website. If you live in New York, you can go straight to one of their stores in Brooklyn. Check his documentary. He says exactly where the store is located, where you can just go get the products. But it's the Ocean Steak, the Purple Phase, and the Blue Magic Sea Moss Gel, which has like 30 of Dr. Sebi's herbs in it and some vitamin D mixed into it too. So that's how you put that whole thing together. So that's a really big deal. So just understand, I am giving you the general principles of, when you exercise, these general principles will always hold true. So the amount of pressure you put on your body, the amount of minerals you need, and what you should have to keep your body going, the way to properly hydrate, the fact that fiber is a necessity in that, otherwise you're just passing water through your body. Keep drinking water and not having enough mineral, you'll just keep peeing it back out, and it'll be used as a flush. It's not really going to be used as a hydrator, it's going to be used as a flush. That's why when you somebody is having a heat stroke, you can tell, you press the skin on the back of their hand or on the side of their hand, it rises really slow, they're dehydrated. You're going to try and give them a bunch of water, it's not going to make it through their system fast enough. That's why doctors take an IV drip, go straight to the vein. They're not just entering water into that vein, it's nutrients and water, electrolytes. So you'll see like potassium, sodium, sometimes some sugar in there. So it's a different concoction of basic minerals, which create the plasmic state uniformity of the waters in your body, the way your body uses them. Straight water is just going to flow through, it's just going to wash through. It starts gelling up, it gets a little thicker and becomes more conductive, so it doesn't move as fast. So now it can do more work and do more cleaning. You see what I mean? And when it's doing more work and more cleaning, you don't need as many cups of water and gallons of water as you needed before, because it will do the work. Now, the reason you don't want to just say, let me just dump salt into everything, is because if you start taking in too much sodium chloride, your body's actually going to start holding waste, because there's no fiber and you're holding on to, you're eating a bunch of junk. So there's no fiber to help kick that stuff out, which means your body got to create a different means to get it out. So you're going to start chugging more water with no fiber in it and stuff like that. And things are just going to move sluggishly slow. So we need proper hydration, proper conductivity within the blood by having proper mineralization to get things moving through the body the way they should be. It also allows your body to make transitions much smoother, because it's got all the methods, you know, all of the systems in place for advancement of your biology. So you're trying to lift weights to lose weight, trying to lift weights to gain muscle. If the channels are clear, your body's not dealing with a lot of inflammation and sickness, it can apply all its resources to the thing you're trying to do, and all of a sudden advancements happen faster. So yes, that's pretty much that. All right, we good, family? Y'all got any questions? Anything else you want me to touch on? That was a lot. That was a lot of general stuff, but it was also a lot. It's pretty basic, but it was a lot. You guys know I like to go basic. I say between the two, Dr. Inky will have the innovation, and he will give you the parts you need to know about the innovation. You go to KT, KT will always give you the hardcore science, no matter how difficult it sounds. So if you're not ready, you're just not ready. You're going to have to catch yourself up. You're going to have to take the terms he got, start studying. That's how KT does things. KT will move forward regardless of where you guys are at. Dr. Inky will move forward, but he will make sure he takes the time to sit on a subject and hammer it home. I'm pretty sure you notice in his videos, even with his music, he'll replay something, will replay like 6 and 7 and 10 times to beat it into your head. I prefer Umar's method, Doc, right? I prefer Umar's method of 3 times. I guess because me, I don't need 6 and 7 and 8, 9, 10. If he does it 3 times and then does it again in another video, I'm fine. 10 times, I'm skipping. Like, because that'll burn my time. I got a lot of catching up to do sometimes, so I'll get past the things that I know by skipping and getting back to what it is we're moving forward to. And then some people might enjoy the music sound, so they'll like let it repeat so they can hear the lyrics and really get it down. So everyone has a different way of learning, but for me, you do a triple repeat, I got it. So yeah, that's that, peoples. Look like y'all good. Y'all ain't saying nothing in there. Y'all must be caught up. No questions or nothing like that. I'll wait a little bit, see what else is up. We got another we haven't, I don't know if he posted the flyer yet, George, if you're still in the building, but Urban Nerds has another event coming up. We're going to go to Arnold's on October 29th. Get the kids to have a little fun. We didn't do too much with them during the summer like we wanted to, so we want to get them to go somewhere. So we're going to take them to Arnold's on October 29th, and we're going to do a little fundraising on that. We're going around the neighborhood looking for some funds, but we always look into the people here and YouTube channels. You want to donate, you could just go over to urbannerdsworldwide.com. You can grab you some gear, or you can go over to George Macon Experience channel. Hang out with George. He'll give you the Cash App. You can go through the Cash App, or you could just go to GoFundMe and type in Urban Nerds Foundation, and you'll know you got it because George Macon's name will pop up. But Urban Nerds Foundation, and you could donate to the GoFundMe over there, and that will work too. Either way. What's some good literature to start on the ventricles? A basic physiology book. Also, you can go to Ninja Nerd Medicine or Science here on YouTube and go to his video about the nervous system, because it's going to start with the brain. And he goes over, he has like this pull apart bodily thing where he explains gray matter and the prefrontal cortex and the front prefrontal cortex to both lobes. And he'll explain, you want to learn what gray matter is, and it'll also include the ventricles in there too. Once you get the information about what's what and where's where, you can do a quick search on Wikipedia, because that will give you a breakdown of what's going on across the internet and how they define the ventricles, what they do, why it came about, what's the usefulness for inside of medicine. Then you're going to look at the most important part that you find in there, and then you're going to go to Google and you're going to put in third ventricle clinical studies. And then it will pull studies that have to show like what things do with ventricles. Now, if you find like something very connecting, like let's say red clover herb and bloodstream, you can put in red clover clinical studies, and it will tell you what the active ingredient in red clover is. And the active ingredient, knowing what it does, it'll remind you of something going on in the biochemistry you can attach it to. Then that's when you got to learn how to combine. And now, I'm not an herbologist, that's not my lane, but you learn how to combine the herbs by seeing what, because you don't want to just combine herbs. Like if this is a blood cleanser, that's a blood cleanser, and you combine both. Well, what if one is cooling and one is heating? You just knock them out. Like you're going to accidentally mix the wrong thing and knock them out. Also, you need to know if you're using a slow working herb or a fast working herb. That can be an issue, because if you use some herbs that work fast, you can't keep taking them for long periods of time. Some herbs work slow, and they don't saturate your body till you've used them enough to really infiltrate the system, like turmeric. Turmeric takes time to really create an actionable thing inside of the system. You have to use it for a while on a regular basis to really get the anti-inflammatory effects, where there are some other things where it's like you get it right away, but make sure you take this much and don't take too much. And I'll give you a clue of one. Don't your ass go take a bunch of Senna talking about I'm trying to do a cleanse. You will be mad as hell at yourself, because it will make you go to the bathroom and you'll chase it with a bunch of water. But at a certain point, you'll have a bunch of stomach pains and want to go to the bathroom and nothing's coming out. There's nothing left. You're still getting the pains because you got that energy reaction from the herbs still in your system. So remember, herbs move energy. That's why they give help. They can have minerals and things in them. Dr. Layla Africa's book was very good too. I think holistic herbalism medicine, something like that. I got it on my phone, but his book was good because he showed that you could take like a regimen and use minerals or herbs or dance moves. Like it was truly holistic. It was like, he was like, you can use like there's a certain herb you can use as like an anti-inflammatory or antioxidant. But he would also say you could take a mineral called glutathione, and everyone knows glutathione is that's known as being a master antioxidant, but as itself. But then there are herbs that are also good with as an antioxidant. So he knew how to separate the categories and show you how to use them in categories. Like, hey, if you can't find the mineral, and here's the amino acid. You can't find the amino acid, then here's the herb. And if you can't find that, then you can find it. He knew how to, his book kind of has a breakdown of different things. But when you do these things, again, you can't say my liver's down, let me get milk thistle. You have to learn the combinations. My liver's down because of what? Is it dehydrated? Maybe I need milk thistle and hydrangea, because that's a hydrating herb. Maybe I want maybe I want to drink sea moss tea because that's going to give me the fiber content is going to give me mineralization and hydration. But then I might want to combine red clove with it. I might want to do something like that with it. So You got to learn combining, because these things by themselves don't do much at all. That's not how that works in herbology. There are some herbs where it's like, oh, we cook them and we prepare them as a tea, so it becomes slow acting. Then there's some where it's like you combine a bunch of stuff and you make a, maybe you put it in a alcohol solution, or maybe you just mix the things themselves and you jar them and they sit for a certain period of time and they start to combine together. I do that with my juices. So in my juices, I'll use the watermelon, the lime, and I use the mint, but it only tastes real good if you let it sit in the refrigerator 24 hours. Before that, it's going to taste good. It's going to be cold. But trust me, there's a huge difference when that thing sits and they take the time to work themselves together. So, having an herbologist really helps, right? Thanks, Google me. Yes, those are the follow channels. The Cash App, if you throw that in there. Generally, if you guys throw something in the Cash App and you make a request of me to do a research on something, I'll do it for you because the Cash App creates the time for me to do it. So that's kind of how that works. Outside of that, I'm an artist and all that stuff, so I tend to have a lot going on. That's why some of my live streams are far apart. And I'm doing one, usually when I wait this long, I try and do one where I'm live streaming at home where I can put some visuals behind it. But I'm like, let me just tap in today because something just happened. I want to talk to the family a little bit. So, that's why I wanted to do that. But yeah, all right, guys, that's it for me for now. I got about an hour and then it's gonna be some more sports action going on. I'm gonna take some photos of. We out here in them the upper mountain areas of PA doing what I do. And I'll be doing some more again tomorrow. So, but yes, let me do the due diligence. Dr. Inky is on American Healer as far as YouTube. If you're looking for the majority of the videos he creates, you go to patreon.com and look up Dr. Inky. You're going to see Melanin versus Diabetes as the symbol. And that's where you're going to go if you're looking for where the doc is. This is a backup channel for the doc, but it's also my channel. So you'll see me going live, or you'll see the doc on this channel with me if anything happens to the other channels that the doctor has. So this will be like a backup channel. You can follow me, as you see Google me is put down there, on Marvin Health and Arts on Instagram. You follow me on Instagram because if anything happens to my channel, you still need a way to connect. Okay. So that's how you can follow me on Instagram. And you also have the Cash App there if you want to throw a little something this way. I can put it towards urban nerds. I can put it towards tech, or I can put it towards time so I can do some of this research for you guys. And that way I'll because sometimes you'll get KT or the doctor will explain something and maybe you want to hear me break it down. So you'll create the room for me to be able to say a little something about it. And that's fine. A lot of us are busy. Sometimes you don't have the time to do these things. So just the way that I confide in the doc to do what the doc does, and I'll throw money to Doc's way and buy products and things over there. And I'll do the same for KT. And I did the same for Layla Africa. And I'll do these things to help support people. You'll be doing the same for me. And it just creates a trickle down. You just find the person that you trust, lock arms, supply that person what they need to take care of the things you don't have the time to do. Because I'm assuming the things you guys do with your time, you're having fun, you're enjoying yourself. You don't really want to spend a lot of time doing a bunch of research. And that's why we're all here. We kind of stand on each other's shoulders. So a lot of elders came before Dr. Inky and KT, like Sebi. So they're standing on their shoulders. So we supply them because they got the time and they got the willpower to do the things, the deep study that we don't get to do because we got other things going on. And there's a certain level I can take on for my circle, and I do the same thing. So we keep moving each other up the chain. Eventually, you guys make it through me. I'm almost certain that being able to listen to KT and Inky is going to be so much easier if you're walking through me to do it. So that's generally a given. Makes life more exciting when you're interested in STEM because STEM runs the world. Whether it's the scoreboards that's working in the sporting events, whether it's the cell phone you're using to watch me or the laptop you got me using right now, the machines we use at home, the cars we drive, STEM is the backbone of everything. The artwork is the way you get to play with the science. That's where art makes its way in. Art is usually the front runner when it comes to getting science. The actual STEM majors is a way of interpreting the artwork. Through math, science, technology, and engineering, we're interpreting art forms. Sound, light, electromagnetism, these are phenomena in the world. We illustrate them with art. We explain them with the STEM majors. So the STEM majors give us a way of putting application to what we see, hear, taste, touch, all those things like that, right? Let me see. Do I experience cramping after my workout? I have a couple of times, and I'll tell you why. Uneven muscle balance. Lack of mineralization within the bloodstream, you might be using it up really fast. So some people will be sitting there trying to hydrate during the workout. It's not getting through the system that fast. So they create things like Gatorade to kind of try and help with that, to make sure your body has something flowing through in the state they believe it should be in. Synthetically, it may or may not work. I don't know. But you get cramping. Another main reason people get cramping is they sat something still too long and then suddenly tried to move the muscle really strong. Because when it sits too long or the opposite muscle is inactive, blood isn't flowing through there as strong as it should. It starts to stagnate and sit still. And then you try and move it real fast out of nowhere, and the tissue's not stretchy enough because it's not properly worked and hydrated. That's why we warm up. Sometimes we don't warm up with stretching. We warm up with light versions of the exercise. If you've been sitting too long or standing too long, you slowly start working your ankles, your fingers, your knees, bend your leg a little bit. You slowly start working and you slowly speed it up. Then chances are you're not going to pull anything. You're not going to cramp up. You're not going to pull anything. Behind on the live, had to pause for 5 minutes. That's cool. All right, now the summer fruit season is coming to an end. What is your plan regarding fruit fasting if you're fruit fasting? I don't do what's called a fruit fast. If I'm fasting, I'll tell you straight up, majority of my fasts are intermittent, meaning the fruit and the veggies change by season. That's going to be what it's going to be. What I look at is the hydration level of what I'm eating, and the hydration level of what I'm eating, and the colors. So in the summer, I can get a lot of mango. Can't get a lot of mango in the wintertime. So I might move over towards orange bell peppers and carrots, because that's something that I can find towards the wintertime. I might move away in the fall. You can start moving towards purple grapes. But after that, you might want to move towards red cabbage because it's easier to get it. So that's kind of how I start moving away. In terms of the fruit, watermelon will go away, but cucumber will always stay. So cucumber is the sugarless version of the watermelon. So you're not going to get that same hype enjoyment that you get out of it unless you learn how to blend up a nice smooth amount for cucumber. In the summer, watermelon is my choice if I'm working out and I'm trying to rehydrate. That watermelon, lime, and mint is the go-to. All the juices I make are great, but if it's one after exercise, that's my go-to. It's either that or it's some form of really cold water. Shoot, even for the bowels, I might do I tend to keep what do you call it? Prune juice. I tend to keep prune juice around, but don't do too much of that. You'll be mad at yourself. Like, get a good couple gulps of that per serving. You'll be good there. Has tangerine disappeared from the market? That is a good question. I haven't really looked too much. I tend to not go down anything on the side of orange, clementine, tangerine, oranges. I don't spend a lot of time over there, but if I'm in like a juicing thing, like where people have me juicing a lot, I'll go back into the clementine area because I tend to take clementines and juice those along with turmeric and ginger, and that will be like my anti-inflammatory juice that I have. That's a good question. I'll check into that. I can't say I've been seeing a lot of tangerine lately, but I never was chasing tangerine like that. Can you cash at me for a consultation? Yes, but the way people usually get at me is they hit me up on Instagram. Drop me a message on Marvin Health and Arts on Instagram and let me know you're trying to get at me for a consultation and have some paperwork ready. If you just want information, that's fine. But if you're trying to really handle a situation, I'm good at informationally interpreting the studies you got. So if your doctor gives you your numbers and all that, you might want to have that ready because we're going to talk history and we're going to talk what's on your studies and how many studies have you had and how long has it been. So, yeah, if you want so based on what you see George Macon saying in the chat, coconut water is the closest thing to blood. It is a true story when they say when people are bleeding out, some people have been able to infuse coconut water into, if you know what you're doing, they've infused coconut water into the vein and kept the person alive through it. So coconut is very close to blood in terms of mineralization. We know it's high in potassium. We know it has magnesium. We know it has what else in it? Potassium, magnesium. It'll have some calcium, I believe, in it, and a few other things. But that potassium, the fact that the water has that mineral content in it, it's like a plasmic water. but it's got to be real coconuts. Young coconuts you'll usually find in the market at about $5 a piece. So it's hard if you're going to have that as your always hydration thing. If you don't get money like that, that can be expensive to keep up. And for me, when I shop, I'm not one of those, oh, I can go shopping once a month. When you eat a lot of live foods, you're not shopping once a month. It could be somewhere around 1 to 2 times a week. You'll be hitting the market. It'll be a standard thing. Now, if you grow food, you won't be hitting the market once and twice a week. You might hit the market once a week, but you might be hitting your garden, cultivating it day after day, but then going to it maybe once a week once you start noticing a chain of maturing fruit or veggies. So that will start chaining. Coconut's rough for us because we're up in the northern region. So, we're going to always get something that's been shipped in. And real coconut water is not bottled coconut water. It is exactly what George is saying. You have to have a real coconut. Bottled coconut water, if you got to choose one, the one that I choose is the one that's pinkish colored. I think it's called 100% real coconut or something like that, but it's like a pinkish color. But that's the one that I choose if I have to choose one. What else? I think that was that for that, yeah. But yeah, if anybody wants me to go over information with them, they got health information, they got a situation going on. Like again, I'm not the herbalist, so I might be able to I will probably end if you're looking for products, chances are I'll point you in the direction of one specific person. I agree with Inky when I say do not go mixing a bunch of stuff unless you know what you're doing. Like let's say you bought all products from what time is it? It's 5. Oh snap! I need to go. I burnt that time quick. I'll finish up a little bit. I don't think coconut water is nasty. For certain people it is though. A lot of people I know don't like coconut, George, but it's not nasty to me. But I forgot this soccer game I'm supposed to be photographing starts at 5. I burnt more time than I thought on here, and I thank y'all for that. Y'all kept me going. But I'm gonna jump off of here, guys, because I ran out of time. I hear them playing the national anthem. That's how I know. So I'm gonna get in here. I got 2 soccer games in a row to shoot. I'm gonna photograph those. Remember, when the video's over, put any extra questions or comments in the comment section after the video's over, not in the live chat one, because I don't think I marked this for the live chat to stay. So after that, you'll want to switch over, right? Is it good to add isometrics to weightlifting? I'm calisthenics certified. I'm gonna tell you right away, yes. Whenever you're bodybuilding or weightlifting at any point, it's good to encompass multiple types. Head training with weightlifting, calisthenics with weightlifting, isometrics, calisthenics, and regular weightlifting. Yes, it is good to mix those things. Peoples, I got to get out of here. Love you guys. I will catch you later. I got to go do my photo thing.